Well, hi friends, I'm Brian Cosby with Provide and Protect, and today I'm with my friend Jim Martin, and we are talking about his experience, his trip over to North Carolina. And I know that South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, they all had impact from Hurricane Helene.
Virginia as well.
And Virginia as well. Yeah. But after the hurricane came through, we wanted to be able to see what was going on. And Jim and his good friend, we'll talk about in a second, they went over there to help out for how many days?
About 8 days. Well, 7 to 8 days.
7 to 8 days to help out. But I want you to know what actually happened there as far as recovery and helping people and that kind of thing. And so I brought Jim in, and Jim has been on our channel before. Was it how to
talking about how raising boys to be men.
Yeah. So check that video out, and I'll
those were the early days.
Those are the early days. But so grateful for you all. Thank you for your support. But let me just jump right in. So the hurricane came through, and initially we were like, okay, this is going to be bad, but we don't know how bad. And then we started seeing pictures and videos of the devastation and the destruction of that hurricane in North Carolina, Tennessee, other places. But I mean, it was really kind of focused on North Carolina in a lot of ways, as far as the news reporting and all that. So it came through, and immediately there's an innate desire, and this part of the purpose of this channel is that for guys like us, men, like there's an innate desire, like this visceral kind of thing that we want to help. Like we want to help people and go and respond and do what we can. And part of this involves skills, involves equipment, community. We're going to get into all that here today. But in the preparation, you're thinking, I don't know what we're going to be doing exactly. I mean, I know we're going to be doing maybe some tree stuff. I mean, who knows? But how did you think through, like, what are you going to be taking? I mean, like supplies. I mean, what did you take? I mean, what was it the stuff that you took?
So how did I think through this? Well, you know, there's the general things like, all right, I'm going to need tools. What am I going to be doing? Disaster cleanup. Okay, what could we run into? We could run into mold. We could run into, you know, kind of debris that could cause, you know, issues. We're going to run into like rivers and streams, you know, that we're going to potentially, I'll be camping, you know, I don't know what, you know, bring my ATV, bring my dump trailer, bring those things, bring as many tools as I can possibly fit. And then also, you know, we don't know what we're going to encounter. So, hey, bring our rifles, bring handguns, be ready.
Self-protection stuff.
Yeah. Be ready for essentially whatever it might be, right? You have like a pretty much disaster event that just happened. So you have looting issues, you have all these things, but how did I specifically think through this? This is what a 2024 person with zero time does. Is I sat down with ChatGPT and I said, make me a list this. This is literally what I did. And because I knew I had pretty much the amount of tools needed to do this thing, but I needed like, hey,
give me a checklist.
And AI gave me a very detailed checklist that turns out I had pretty much everything I needed. There was a couple things, you know, some extra batteries, this and that. And then, you know, kind of working with the prompts, like help me.
Gave you what you needed.
Yeah, and then help me deploy a plan here for, you know, if we run into. There was scenario 1, which is pure search and rescue, and then scenario 2 is like recovery rebuild. And I just put those together, and that's
So his truck, dump trailer,
ATVs, tools, whatever. Mostly demo tools. I mean, you know, I had, you know, a framing gun, cordless framing gun, that sort of thing, which I ended up using.
So our church, so Jim and I are in the same church, and he mentioned this to our church. We were praying for him and his friend. So you get on the road, you get there. What's like the first? How do you actually get into like helping out? Like, what was that experience?
So that's actually a logistical challenge that a lot of people that wanted to go help out face. Unfortunately, Silas had more time on his hands. We need to find a person of contact, right? We need to find someone that's actually got boots on the ground. You have at the time that we deployed, and I'm speaking to my experience roughly a week out to, 2 weeks out from the actual event. So every stage is going to have people have different experiences. They're seeing different things, that sort of thing. By the time we were getting there, kind of immediate search and rescue, for people, life-saving, rendering aid and life-saving was on the cusp of ending, and like cadaver search, like initial kinds of hey, we need to find these families that are still missing had just begun, right? So that's kind of and we have power out, roads closed, all those kinds of things. So
so let me pause you real quick. So if you're maybe watching this like a year from now or 2 years from now, there's a big hurricane. It came through, and it pretty much turned over the western side of North Carolina, eastern Tennessee, and Hurricane Helene, and it just dumped a ton of water. And it washed out whole towns, whole communities.
Right. So they said that the equivalent of like 650 days of Niagara Falls fell in 24 hours.
Wait, say that again?
So 650 days of Niagara Falls, like the amount of volume, the volume of water that falls, fell in a 24-hour period right in that area. And just geographically, the Little Tennessee, the way that topography is, those kinds of rivers and streams, small little creek beds that people had seen, trickles of water became rushing rivers. And so I guess starting with what was our plan? The plan was to go help, find someone, find person of contact. You have the normal organizations that are out there like Samaritan's Purse. And even then we beat them out there, like in this area specifically that we were at. And so it's kind of just go find people to help. A lot of people are looking for someone to give them permission to go do something, to go help out. You don't need permission, because at the end of the day, like a lot of these people, there's this like belief that, the government or someone's going to come save me. It's like, no, like the mentality is no one's coming to help you, but if it is, it's going to be your neighbor. It's going to be someone in your county, or it's going to be, hopefully in this instance, a lot of folks from county and surrounding areas. That were the kind of the first people in
your surrounding area.
We would
larger
kind of surrounding area in a couple hours, right? So
all right, so you get there and you make a point of contact. You have a POC there as far as like help. Here's someone that knows what's going on. Here's how we can help. Kind of come in alongside and help out.
So and to quote, I think Tim Kennedy's been the one saying this, and everyone can YouTube or Google this stuff, but it's like, or don't use Google, use Go.co. Everyone can see the actual devastation, right? The quote, apocalyptic levels of devastation is not an understatement. You can't really describe, unless you are there, what that much water can do to very fast rushing water, and then the debris fields and what they can do to these areas.
Because you'd have like a little stream typically
that became like the way that it's brought,
river,
a massive river, right? And then people, the Monday morning quarterbacks go, well, if it was rising that fast, how come you couldn't get out? Well, the windstorms knocked over trees and power lines and all these things, and it happened so fast that it's like, well, where are you going to go? You're going to stay bedded down, and that's some of the decision you're making a decision quickly, and
so you made a point of contact there,
right? Made a point of contact. Our initial kind of thing was we're helping deliver supplies.
Okay.
We were using the ATVs to get to these areas, using the truck,
because you couldn't do a Corolla.
No.
So it's like so like a Toyota Corolla couldn't get into the haulers.
There are two vehicles that you did not see in a lot of the haulers. One was the Cybertruck, and the electric vehicle, doesn't run well.
Where are you going to charge it?
That 2500 Champion right there is not going to be charging your electric vehicle quickly.
My generator over here.
Yeah, the generator is not going to. So electric vehicles, no, and then it's just small cars. You needed 4-wheel drive, you needed ATV, you need a UTV.
Because there's so many like debris and like washed out roads and all this stuff.
So
really drive. The ATV UTV kind of platform is a great was a great option for
hands down. The ATV or UTV are the most. Were the most useful vehicles that I saw being operated out there.
All right,
the UTVs especially.
So let me pause you right there. So I've got several videos on ATVs, UTVs for like homesteading and like everyday work and taking feed and straw. I've got some in my shop here to the animals, and I use it today. I mean, I was working today on the road, my neighborhood, but I never thought about an ATV or a UTV in a grid down like disaster kind of scenario. Like that's a whole nother. It seems like a whole nother kind of use for something like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, even like in this area, you know, like last winter, roads are iced over or whatever. I mean, literally that vehicle, and you know, like if you have a tow winch on it.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone got stuck because this is river mud. Like it's just the UTVs were pulling people out.
Really?
In the ATVs.
Wow.
It was pretty pretty impressed. I was very impressed. And
all right, so tell me real quick before we get to the lessons, what did you do? Like when you were there for those 7-8 days,
yeah, so
what did you do?
First couple days were delivering supplies. We're working with these nurses because there was a actual, and this came out as a rumor. It was true. It may have been a little overly kind of how it appeared on social media, but there was a armed group at the early on that actually stood up a supply run with their ARs,
like a local
militia. Yeah, that did happen, like very, very deep in kind of the backwoods area. But so that happened. So everyone was paranoid, and so we ended up helping these nurses out, providing armed support for them, which actually led us to meeting some folks, specifically this one gal who we ended up spending about half a day with her. Her power was down, so I ended up wiring her well pump to a generator
to get water.
There was no pigtails available for like the 30 amp plug-in or a 30 amp disconnect. So
that's a good thing. So go ahead and get that now. I mean,
get that now. You'll want those. You need to have an actual generator plan. A lot of people buy the generator, and they get.
But then how do you connect the generator to what you actually
need? And so there's that situation, which with I actually just like, hey, look, I could figure this out. And then I called my electrician who I work with a lot and basically said, hey, this is what I got. And he's like, oh yeah, man, just take the cover off, do this or that. And so, did that for her and it worked out.
Good. And she had electricity because of that.
She had water, running water in her property because of that.
Yeah.
Power, everyone was kind of getting generators and all the power is being run off of generators at that point. So that happened. And then because of, I guess, one, mostly because of Silas, but then two, because Silas and I were probably like the most kind of like healthier, in shape looking of this kind of group we were with. People constantly, I mean, actually that's something that needs to be noted.
You need to know.
I will harp on this.
I saw a study about a month or two ago that said that 48% of Americans are obese.
Yeah. And I think in the region that we're in is probably higher than that. It's probably like 70 to 80%. And that's not an exaggeration. So
when you're thinking about preparation and you're thinking about being a provider and protector for your family and yourself and for your community, like that's an important piece of your own health and how you take care of your body and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised because like Silas is more jacked than I am.
He's like military.
He's military, but like he's 50, but he like looks just like a Greek god. Like he's jacked. So everyone would come up to us like we were in charge, and we're just two guys helping out.
Yeah, but you just looked at because you were not overly obese.
Overly obese, yeah. So, anyways, that's kind of beside the point. But that actually led us into hooking up with this group that was out there, a humanitarian group full of veterans, and they had a specific mission going on, which was basically a cadaver search, a body search, at the point of where in the specific region we're in, there was one area that was not accessible really by your typical person, your typical volunteer with a search dog, and geographically very hard to get to. So what we ended up doing with this group was taking whitewater boats down what was at one point a small river had become an actual river with rapids. So we had the canine dogs on the boat.
On the boat.
We had a logistics supply team to provide chainsaws, water, switch out the dogs. We had air support for that. Kind of this big moving mission down this river.
To find
in the bush. Like we're out in the bush for 5 days doing this thing, and ultimately with the purpose of providing closure for families.
How many showers did you get during your time? I
didn't shower.
You didn't shower
until the end. Okay. Yeah. That first shower is nice. But yeah.
All right, let's go just for the sake of time here, and brevity for this video for you guys. The important thing is really the lessons you learned from going and doing this. So
yes,
you get there, you come back, you're reflecting upon, okay, for myself, my family, but also for my community, what are the lessons that you learned from this trip that you did?
That's a great question, and I think it's the most useful thing of even having this conversation, right? Because a lot of your stuff is focused in this specific idea of providing and protecting, right? And there are emergencies and disasters and things that happen that are very relevant. And so the first thing is that I will say is that community is the foundation of everything. And in the preparedness kind of homesteading world, there is an archetype of this person that believes that they can do it all by themselves and that they need to be self-reliant, so self-reliant that like they don't need other people. But that's actually not how civilization's ever worked. It's inefficient, and in a survival situation, you're the one that's actually like kind of you have no support.
Yeah. So what does that look like? I mean, you say community, but when you were there, in North Carolina, I mean, what did that look
the
like?
Glues of that? So the glue of that is owned space. Is kind of this idea I hear about people like throwing around the internet, right? So it's local communities that have volunteer fire stations.
Okay.
There's churches.
Okay.
There's larger buildings, which are typically volunteer in the rural areas. Is
families too?
Families with property that actually have the resources to host people, right? It's those kinds of things kind of all forming together, and people just like naturally gravitating towards the things they do, right? Like in a disaster situation, there isn't an argument really around gender roles. People just go and do what they do, right?
You got to do what you got to do.
What you got to do, right? And so the community aspect is huge. And to illustrate this point, there's a guy named Randy Buckner who is a builder in Yancey County, and he was at and is probably still right now at West Yancey Fire Station from 6 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock at night every single day. He knows every single person that volunteers in that fire station, and he's done work for these people in this community.
The true pillar.
Like he is the definition of a pillar in this community. Okay. And because of that, and because of how efficient that whole fire station ran, everyone that's kind of looped in that area, they're all good.
They were connected.
They were connected. There was something very impressive. Whereas you move to areas that were clearly less tied in with community. Yeah. And it was much less organized. It was harder to get supplies. It was harder to know who needed help in that community. Yeah. And then even further on the community thing, because of that kind of mission that I was on, we're kind of in the bush, quote unquote. But we're actually staying on like family farms and properties as we're going through this. Who hosted us, and these areas that were strategic areas that this one family. I'm drawing a blank on their name. They had literally had this land since the 1700s, like
long time.
We're talking continental North Carolina through and through, right? Like their family.
It was a colony that they fought in the.
They're probably related to Daniel Boone, that whole thing, right? Yeah. And they were totally fine. They had high ground. Their pastures were developed. Their property is developed. It was in such a way that there was. This disaster happened and they were okay because they had a lock on the area. They understood it.
All right. So this is one lesson. So first lesson here is community. And what I have, as a pastor of a church, I have typically found that people, they want community. They want the fellowship, they want the support, the prayers, all of that, and actually physical help from others when times get difficult. But they have not invested in that community
until they need
it, and then they expect it at that point, or they expect it from the government at that point. That's a whole other thing. But what I'm hearing from you is that in a disaster situation, and it doesn't have to be just a hurricane. I mean, we're talking about like this is a principle that really transcends not just hurricanes or natural. I mean, this is something that is just true just because of humanity. Like, we need other people in community and all of that just because of who we are. And so if I can encourage you to invest in that now, like to know each other well, to know the good, the bad, and the ugly, and to love each other anyway, to know each other's like weaknesses, strengths, just, so if something happens, like, I know I can call Jim and I can be like, hey, Jim, all right, I don't know how to do this. I need you right now. You need that now. So don't wait. I guess the point, don't wait until something bad happens, like a hurricane or something else. Like, this is something that we need to invest in right now.
Community is built in your day-to-day throughout the time. So when things do go bad, people know where you live. They know who your family is. They know all those things. You're not just, you're not an afterthought. You're actually part of what's going on.
All right. So community, what's another thing you learned?
So I touched on it a little bit, kind of piggybacking off of community, but strategic, if you're thinking about, these kinds of situations, there has to be like forethought in the actual potential threats. If you do like a SWOT analysis of your property,
strengths, weaknesses.
Yes, strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities, or opportunities, threats, right? And so, being in a low point where water can flood your property is definitely a low point, right? And there's a lot of homestead people that live in that area where they lost their properties. And
so evaluate. I mean, evaluate where you live.
Evaluate where you live, and like the threat of flooding could be.
That's just one thing, but there may be
or
fire.
It could be fire. Yeah, if you live in California, some people.
I mean, but even here in Tennessee. I'm not going to tell you where I live, but in Tennessee, you look at the trees around you, you look at what could burn, and do you have a remedy, or do you have a way to?
Even you mentioning trees, like trees are a huge threat to your house, and the safety of your family. Like more people, like we actually had a storm last year locally. It's like multiple people were killed by trees, and so that's like just practical advice. Like have clearance from your house. If there is, at least have your local tree guy give you the okay. Like, that one's gonna be all right.
It's leaning the opposite way from your house or something.
Right. Yeah. I know some people don't.
All right. So in this area, as far as a lesson, I guess, so one is community. Another is just the logistics. Of thinking about where you live, like those preparations,
and all the things that people laugh about. Maybe like, oh, you bought the supply food, or you have you have radio communication. You have a setup, right? That you have a bow thing. You have like those kinds of things, whatever it might be. They actually really do help you in these situations. And so it's not. It's. I think, at least the world since COVID is kind of waking up to these kinds of things, that the government is not going to come save you. It's not an exaggeration to say that when I was there, where I was at, I did not see FEMA once. Okay. And
so I don't know if this is one of your lessons.
Well, that's actually where I was going to.
Okay. All right.
Transition.
Keep going. Transition.
This lesson is it's like a huge takeaway is no one's coming to save you. And like I said earlier, if it is, it's going to be someone that's community.
Yeah.
And
so can I ask you this real quick?
Yeah.
7-8 days you were there. How many FEMA personnel did you see?
In the region I was at, I did not see any FEMA. That doesn't mean that they weren't there. It's just
Didn't see
my experience. I didn't see.
Anecdotally, you didn't
Yes.
see them. Okay. What about other federal help?
So National Guard was providing kind of road security in some areas.
Okay.
Their involvement was limited, and then
What do you mean by limited?
it was they really were providing kind of, this is just from what I can
Yeah.
see, they were providing what a National Guard element would be trained to do, which is kind of like security.
Yeah.
You know, they're not
They're not
jumping into
cadaver, like
yeah, they're
jumping
not,
rivers and like
they were doing that. They weren't, you know, they're not jumping. They did have a unit of civil engineers that was doing one road I saw, but like there was bridges and roads all over the place with guys from Texas with their skid steers and guys from Minnesota. Like the amount of dudes with heavy equipment and chainsaws from like everywhere east of the Mississippi, South Texas, I mean everywhere, that descended on that place. I saw something today that this up in Chimney Rock, a group of coal miners with some heavy equipment, bulldozer, skids. They like rebuilt an area that the state Department of Transportation said, oh, this is we're not. It's going to take months, potentially years, and they did it in a week.
Yeah.
You know?
All right. So that's an important thing for probably for you guys watching here today. You know, we got to think about the community, but then in thinking about our community is thinking about, well, what can I provide? Like, you know, part of it is, you know, if I only know software on a computer, okay, that's helpful, right? Good, that's great. But in a difficult disaster situation, and again, it doesn't have to be just hurricane, any kind of grid down situation or difficulty that we have, like, are there other things that you can also contribute? I mean, as far as a skill or tools, I mean, there's two things. I mean, there's tools, like, I mean, you said a ATV or ATV,
yeah, chainsaw. I mean, all that stuff,
so he brought tools. That's one part. Is like having at least a few tools. I mean, you can see in the background of this video, there's a few tools in here. So there's tools piece, but then there's the skill piece. I mean, I can tell people, like in a survival situation, like go and set up a shelter if you have to. Here's a I don't know, a tarp and some paracord.
Right.
All right. It's one thing to have the tarp and the paracord. It's another thing to know
how to use it.
How do I do this?
Right.
So the skill piece in operating a chainsaw, it's one thing to have operating a chainsaw, operating a UTV in a winch.
Yeah.
Like the skill piece, I mean, even heavy equipment. I mean, today I was helping a neighbor on our road out here with my excavator.
Yeah.
Heavy equipment. Like to know people that can operate heavy equipment. I mean, for something like that, for sure. Communications. I mean, I just posted a video with my dad.
I saw that. Yeah.
About emergency communications. Like, well, in a grid down situation, like how do you communicate without your cell phone? Well, one good thing is to know a ham radio operator. Like, so you can communicate not just like yelling, you know, or your cell phone, but you can actually like communicate to other people in a actual grid of people that are focused on helping others in this kind. So there's the tool piece, and it's important to have tools. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's an investment. I know they're all expensive and that kind of thing. And then the skill piece of using them. I don't want to just have a chainsaw on the shelf. Like, I want to be able to know, hey, if it's really cold outside, like, is my chainsaw going to operate a little bit differently than it's warm? I mean, just the skill piece of operating a chainsaw could be a value, an asset, or what's the opposite?
A liability.
Liability on a team if you're trying to help other people. Like, you don't want to be having to, like, you know,
you don't want to be
babysit someone else that doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah. So I think that like if you're coming from maybe the more we come from a society that preaches specialization in hardcore, right? And it's always about becoming an expert in these kinds of things. And oftentimes in our white collar world, it's very much, spreadsheets, coding, those kinds of things, right? Which are removed from creating physical intelligence, mechanical intelligence, right? And the great thing about physical skills, like let's just take one trade. If you become a good carpenter, you now understand how to function with your hands, and you learn a type of knowledge that is not the same as how things kind of work in that world. And so things begin to translate over, and the more you can stack those skills on top of each other, the more that even if you come into something you don't understand, you have the confidence and the kind of general foundational experience to go, okay, figure this out.
So what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say, is that it's in a disaster situation, emergency situation, something's difficult, especially. I mean, there's other applications too, but especially that the generalist that knows a little about a lot, but can transfer one skill to another. I mean, if I know how to work on vehicles, for example, and I know a little bit, but if I have some kind of mechanical knowledge there, it is easy to transfer that knowledge to working on a chainsaw or working on some other piece of equipment.
It's similar to the concept that like someone that has mastered 2 to 3 languages would pick up that third language, fourth language quicker because they've mastered that ability to learn those kinds of things and to think.
It's almost like a muscle memory.
It really is. It's the book I would recommend if you're into that sort of thing is Shop Class for Soulcraft. If you come from like the white collar world,
say it again.
It's a book by a guy named Matthew Crawford called Shop Class as Soulcraft.
Shop Class as Soulcraft. Okay.
And it's about the book is about kind of a return to useful arts. He was worked for a big DC think tank and started a motorcycle shop and got into that whole thing.
Well, it's happening now. I mean, a lot of folks. I mean, a lot of younger folks today. And maybe you're watching this and you're a younger guy watching this and you're thinking, man, I don't know if I want to spend 4 years in getting a bachelor's in English or something. And you're thinking, well, could it be more helpful for me and my family to be a provider and protector to go to a community college and get something that's more in a trade that can help in a kind of way. I don't want to just
Well, I think that there's English, like people that are thinking about providing, protecting, thinking about homesteading, thinking about operating weapons, thinking about like kind of where could we be heading as a society? Like what are bad things that could happen if we have civil unrest, all those kinds of things. There's actually a tremendous amount of carryover in understanding one physical skill. Let's say you're an HVAC guy who starts a business. So you have all these like skills that the white collar dude is going to have to learn, accounting, spreadsheets, all those things. But then you have the actual opportunity to learn physical skills, which translate into other things as you get older. Yeah, more exposure. Those kinds of things. So
they're not. I mean, it's good to learn one. Yeah. But it's also good to learn the general knowledge.
Yeah, general knowledge. Very few people are pursuing it anymore.
And to teach your children that. I mean, this is a big piece. I know that YouTube is teaching mostly children today. Yeah. But for a hands-on experience, especially with the love of a father.
Yeah, absolutely.
In that environment.
There's that meme. It's like a kid and his dad framing a house, and it says, "Don't give them all the things you wish you had. Teach them all the things you wish you knew." Oh. Which good. I'm a big believer in that. Yeah. So.
Well, Jim, first off, thank you for saying, it's kind of like that Isaiah 6 idea. Here I am, send me, like, let's go do it. And you did it. I wish I could have done that with you and short notice, but our church was able to support people in our church, able to help in some ways. Yeah. I mean, as far as finances, as far as gas and that kind of thing. And so you weren't going alone in that sense. Like you had the prayer.
No, I received an incredible amount of support from the church, which was overwhelming and was amazing. And so if you're watching this and you did support me, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Takeaways from today. Invest in community now. Your neighbors, your friends, your church, like invest in your community now. Learn some skills and knowledge about like just everyday general knowledge about how to do things. Not just your specialized thing, what you do, maybe in your job, in coding or, whatever it is. Like learn some other skills to not only help you and your family, but also your community if something happened. And then like you got to really think ahead to what are the most likely scenarios that could happen, but you do need to be prepared as a especially most of my audience are men, like 98%. So not to, if you're a female watching this, encourage you too, but most of my audience is men. And you are the provider protector. So you have to think ahead to what are the things that could threaten my family. And you got to stand in the gap. Like you got to step up and do that. So, well, Jim, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much.
And sharing this. I mean, I think a lot of people are wondering like, hey, we hear this in the news about the hurricane and we see certain images and videos and all that. But to hear from someone who actually was there and helped out in a lot of different ways and saw what they saw, I think it's really helpful for people. So anyway, thanks you so much for joining us today. And if you've not already done so, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. We appreciate you and your support. We'll see you in the next video.